Welcome along, my aspiring allies, and thank you for joining me on this most recent episode of the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. Today, I am joined by Kate Fletcher, and we have just had a fantastic conversation where we just got a little bit honest about the work of DEI, some of the mistakes that we have both made, and things that we just wish people in the DEI space, ourselves included, would do differently. Now, Kate is an inclusion member manager for Dial Global. They are a coaching and training service-based organisation. But actually, one of the really critically interesting things for me, at least, is that she spent a very long time working in the Met Police, including doing work in the DEI space. So she has got a really fantastic, and I would say incredibly unique perspective for someone doing this work. So I really would welcome you along to this conversation where we really are quite honest about our experiences, both personally and professionally, and some of the mistakes that we've made along the way that have led us to the work that we're currently doing now. So without further ado, please sit back, relax, and get comfortable in whichever way works best for you. And please welcome Kate Fletcher to the Speaking of Inclusion podcast. And I was thinking about a really good way of I wonder how I can try and kick off this, because I thought we're just going to talk about all the ways we fucked up in DEI, aren't we? And I was just like, how do you so how do we position this to my audience? And then I was like, I think I'll just go with that. It's just like Kate and I are going to talk about fucking up in DEI.
Yeah,
Who wants to hear us tell stories about the shit that we've got wrong, or
yeah,
the things that we've witnessed, or just the stuff to help shine a light on the fact that actually the people doing the work of DEI are also just human people too.
yeah. Still learning as we go as well. Well, it
Yeah.
changes, doesn't it? It's a quick changing environment. So yeah, need to be a bit forgiving.
Yeah.
Even though
No
I pull that
definition
face
of
a
that.
lot.
Oh, hang on. Here comes Teapot. I don't know if you can hear her.
I couldn't.
No? Awesome
No.
stuff. That means she's not getting picked up on the recording. So she is yowling. I've got a
Oh,
feeling that she's coming this way.
yeah.
She'll destroy the printer en route. So that's fun. But anyway, so all of the ways in which things have gone sideways in our history of DEI, and I think one of the best ways probably to set the scene as well might be to talk about our route into getting into the work of DEI as well, because I think the context matters.
Hmm.
Because I don't know anybody that works in this space. And I never know whether to call it an industry or a space as well. So that's interesting. So I'm opting for space today.
Spindustry.
A industry. Does that mean we're all just single people shuffling around? Actually, we probably are all just like yeah, just spinsters shuffling around. Right. Yeah, the spindustry. So I don't know anybody who kind of got here by kind of deciding this was absolutely what they wanted to do straight away. We've all had experiences en route that have usually angered us or given us uncomfortable feelings or have made us see things that we think, oh, this needs to be better.
Hmm.
That tends to be the motivation. So do you recognize yourself in that as well? Or
Yeah, I referred to myself for an amount of time while I was in the Met Police as a professional lesbian because that felt like all I was doing was gay stuff because there were no other lesbians and there were. Let me tell you, I know factually,
statistically, there must have been.
statistically, and absolutely, there was a lot of lesbians in the Met, and there's still a lot, and more bisexual people actually than lesbians. But you wouldn't know that. But there was yeah, I referred to myself a few times, what's your role? And I was like, well, I never thought as a kid I would grow up and say, I want to be a professional lesbian when I get older. But that is how I felt. I was the token that got rolled out for events. Yeah. And having been in that space, I'm going to use space for this one because it definitely wasn't an industry in the Met.
Mm.
But being in that space, absolutely, and I didn't acknowledge it for a long time either, that it was only when I grew up, because I joined when I was 19. But as I grew up, I was like, yeah, this isn't okay. A lot of what is happening is not okay. And I recognize that on my behalf and on behalf of other people as well. So, yeah. How about you?
Yeah. No, and I think that makes complete sense. And that is definitely what I hear from a lot of other people who are doing this work, is that we just spend so long participating within the systems and at the same time thinking this is really bad. Why am I doing this? Why am I part of this? And yet we still are.
Yeah,
And up
yeah.
until such a point that it's either an event happens that makes us go, okay, that's enough,
Mm,
or this the what is it, like the death by a thousand cuts, like the series of things just becomes so overwhelming that we're like, right, I've had enough now.
yeah, definitely. And I think for me, it did take a while for the penny to drop from a diversity and inclusion perspective, because it wasn't a thing. It wasn't
Yeah.
a thing then. And I think I'd been serving for probably 13 years, 14 years by this point. So I'd been in the Met for a significant amount of time. And I had my son when I was 29. So I'd been in the Met for 10 years when I had him. And it'd always been the comments about being gay, like, oh, you're too pretty to be gay. I was younger, like, granted, I was younger. But you're too pretty to be gay. You are I'll be really frank and you can edit this out, but do you want a threesome? Are
Oh,
you
we don't edit on this program, so
You did
it's all
mention that before. You did
yeah,
mention that before. Do you want a threesome? Are you've just obviously the normal ones, like you've just not found the right man yet, like really over sexualized behavior.
yeah,
But I would never have called it that at the time. And I've called it banter because
yeah.
I was desperate for somewhere to belong, and the Met was it. The Met, and it was it. There was some, and there are some fantastic people that work in the Met, but there was also this undercurrent of over sexualization. Like I said, I was 19 when I joined, so it was an interesting place, but I accepted it and I tolerated that to be around me because that was normal and that's all I'd experienced.
Yeah.
Having my son changed it a lot and changed the way I thought about these things a lot because I'm now advocating for him. So when people started questioning who's the real mum and pulling faces of like, so what is he going to call you both mum? Like really, really aggrieved by the fact that this human may call somebody more than one person mum. And then there was the questions of, so does he have any men in his life? That would not be asked by the other girl who returned from on maternity leave at the same time as me. So there's all this going on, and that really started to irk me, to say the least. But no one really cared. Everything just gets brushed under the. And if you complain, you then end up with a complaint. So I then ended up in training school. So this was when I was on frontline policing. I went to Hendon, the training school for the new recruits. And actually, how I ended up working in diversity and inclusion was, and I wasn't part of the LGBT network because that was for men, run by men, still is. There's no women there.
Because
Uh,
there's only LGBT men in the police.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly that. Trans and LGBT men. So I ended up being the co-chair of the network for a while, but left and started my own group because it was just men. They were not interested in anything I had to say or any work that was really important that needed doing. I'll come back to that. But yeah, how I ended up working in this space was because we had a couple of transgender recruits come through Hendon, and they were like, we needed to teach them. They needed, because of the complexity of the law, we needed to tell them that they weren't allowed legally to search prisoners in custody. You can search anyone you like on the street. Male, female can search male, female, so it doesn't matter. And the Police and Criminal Evidence Act is the legislation that governs the police powers, or the police certain powers. So this part is referred to sex. It's an old piece of legislation, 1984, and it says you have to be of the same sex to search someone. And the sergeant said, just leave it, Kate. It's a can of worms. Just don't even bother looking into it. And I was like, well, you can't like send these people into, the Met, into London. And if they're going to be breaking the law, that you can't
yeah.
do that, like just because it's a difficult conversation to have. So I started looking into it. Go
Just a
on.
second, sorry. The messaging was, don't educate these upcoming police officers in the law so that
Yeah,
they understand the law that they're upholding.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah. Because the reason was as well, because there isn't an answer. So he didn't
Yeah.
even know there wasn't an answer. And I don't believe there is an answer to this either, because of the Equality Act and the Gender Recognition Act, we're not allowed to out people
Yeah.
if they're going through through gender recognition, applying for a gender recognition certificate. But equally so, they're not allowed to search somebody of the same sex. So it's like, well, how do we protect them? How do we protect the prisoner from, and how do we protect the police? So lots of protecting, and the laws just clashed basically.
Yeah.
But they're saying leave it. there's no answer there, and there isn't. There still hasn't changed. The law is and it's even more challenging now,
Yeah.
or not. It depends which way you look at it, actually. So that's how I ended up working in it, because I knew a couple of trans recruits. Because I was the face of the lesbians, lots of recruits would come, and we have 300 recruits every 5 weeks at that point. So we had a continuous large amount of people coming through, and I was the face of the gays. So they would go and speak to, they would call you Staff Fletcher, that would be my name. Go and speak to Staff Fletcher because she's gay, she'll be able to help you. So I had like these little gay groups as well. It was great. It was kind of like being famous, to be honest. It's
Is
great.
this like when you feel like you're LinkedIn famous, when someone says, I follow you, and you're like, oh, and it's just like,
Yeah,
yes, I'm in charge of the gays here in the police.
yeah. Professional lesbian. Yeah. And I really felt like that. So yeah, I had like a couple of groups that people could drop in, and just so they could connect, because it wasn't being done by the network, by the LGBT network, the employee resource group. So and that's how I started, really, is because I looked at that, I was like, well, that's not okay. So then I started making noise, and I haven't stopped making noise since. So that's how I ended up going into it, because it just wasn't fair, and everything that I'd experienced as well. I was like, hang on a minute, actually, if I say something, people listen to me. And that was a real turning point, because it's so hierarchical, obviously. It's rank and file. I can't say no if someone tells me to go and do, if a sergeant says do this. But actually I found that I could still make noise and
Yeah.
not be, it's an actual offence. I can't remember the name of it now. If you fail to do your duties, as you've been in, refusing to comply with a lawful order. So, but they weren't lawful orders. So then I started to find my voice. I was like, hang on a second. No, you can't do that. Like, this is what I'm going to do instead. Hello, Commissioner. Do you know? So I just started making lots of noise nationally, for women, most certainly LGBT women, because violence against women and girls, my experiences of that over sexualization, the fact that I could see it still, and not, this is for any woman. This isn't just for LGBT women. This is for any woman, that over sexualization. And that's how I got involved. I was like, it's just
Yeah.
not fair. That's, yeah, that
Yeah.
feeling that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine that resonates with a lot of people. I mean, again, firstly, anybody who experiences life as a woman is going to understand what it means to actually we always do seem to come out on that side of over sexualization, up
Mm.
until the point that you get into kind of like your late 30s and 40s and you become invisible.
Yeah.
Because you're no longer attractive to society, and it's just like you don't exist anymore. And then you
Yeah.
find yourself like, I find myself pining for the days like no one looks at me anymore. And I'm like, I wanted this all along, and now I'm missing it, in a really twisted way. But it's yeah, and as an ace person, so as an asexual person, I really resonated with what you said about like, oh, too pretty to be gay. When it's just like I've had that from people, like, but you're too attractive to be ace. I'm like, what do those two things have to do with anything? Like,
Yeah.
what a ridiculous statement.
Yeah.
So I find that interesting. So then you say, okay, so obviously then having your son, that was a bit of a turning
Mm.
point then for you. Um, what, how did that shape some of your own perspectives in the way that you were kind of viewing the world, and the realization maybe on some of the things that you had either kind of let slide or participated in that you were like, do you know what? I wish I hadn't.
It was a soft play. We were at soft play, and I have this internalized homophobia still. I think and I will always look. I hate coming out. I know that I am like gay everywhere, but I still hate it. Certainly, if I can see your face, and I'm waiting to see if you're going to cringe a little bit, if there's going to be a slight tell. But so I was at soft play with him, and he must have been about 2.5, 3, and he shouted at the top of his voice, in a moment of quietness in soft play, "I've got two mums." And I was like, oh no. And I was really embarrassed, and I was really ashamed. And I thought, I can't be like, I can't recoil when I chose to have a child. I spent a lot of money trying to have a child, and he's a wonderful human being. I can't recoil, and I have to be brave. I have to be courageous. I have to own it. Like, and I can't, like, I'm his role model. So if I'm embarrassed by it, he's going to be, and he needs to be prepared to be brave as he gets older and face these things head on. So that was really a turning point for me, where I did have to have a little bit of a conversation and address some of my own issues there. And that's really where I thought, no, I'm not tolerating this now. This is too much. It's And so I started calling people out. I remember I was working Notting Hill Carnival, and I was posted with another woman, so we could pair up on who to go on foot patrol with. And the sergeant there said, "Oh, lipstick one," called us like a call sign of lipstick one, and I called him out. I was like, "It's just not appropriate to say that." He was like, I was like, why say that? I was so irked. I know it sounds silly, but I was really annoyed that there was all of these other police, God, there's thousands of police officers that work here. And even on our small team, there's 18 of us. And yet the only people that he's decided to give a name to was the two women that got posted together. And I was like, no, I'm not tolerating it anymore. So that was a real change when I was like, nope, end. That is it. You've now got assertive Kate. I was going to say aggressive, but that's what we call women who are assertive. Yeah, assertive Kate.
That's what we get labeled.
That's what we get labelled. Yeah,
Yeah.
labeling myself it, but yeah, assertive. No, I'm standing up for everybody, and yeah, fairly. I like to come at it from a position of fairness, and I do. I love what I do. I love the difference that it makes, and you forget sometimes how much you know as a diversity and inclusion specialist, and you forget how much other people don't know as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good point. But I just want to loop back before I ask another question, because when you said there about, I know I mean, that comment about lipstick one, I mean, that's, I think for the avoidance of doubt, bang out of order. And I think most people listening to this would really understand that any form of kind of nicknames like that is punching down, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just misogyny 101, right?
Yeah.
But when you like a silly thing, that's not a silly thing. Like, and I think that's also something, isn't it, that we minimize our negative experiences somehow, like by being
Mm.
like, oh, this thing happened, and it, because to other people it might sound trivial, but it isn't. And we
Yeah.
kind of accommodate their comfort rather than just by saying, no, that's misogynistic.
Mm. That's
And,
true.
and
Totally.
actually, I kind of wish, I feel I know I've definitely accommodated other people's feelings by kind of really feeling something and then trying to tiptoe around it in order to kind of, how am I going to figure out how they're going to hear this?
Mm.
Which sometimes is necessary, because if we go in with the full weight sometimes of our assertiveness, people don't listen and they do get defensive, and you don't get an outcome that is useful. But also, there are definitely times where I think I will have engaged in behavior where actually, if someone could have, and in the end, someone actually did, but if someone could just say, do you know what, Kate, that's really racist. Like it was actually the thing that I needed to be like, oh shit, yeah, it is oh, now I see it. Okay, fuck.
Mm.
Um, because otherwise if it there are some things I think that we tiptoe around and we don't label, and we don't feel the full weight of the harm
Mm.
that we're doing.
Mm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's important. And I always appreciate the validation for those things, because I don't think I've really told that story before, because it does seem so trivial. So yeah, thanks for the validation, because it is just misogyny 101, exactly
Yeah.
as you say. It is. Yeah.
Because if we, to break it down, if people are kind of listening to this or watching this and thinking, well, okay, how does that work? It's like, it feels like a throwaway comment, but it's the fact that we have normalized, like you say, banter, air quotes for that. Like, we've normalized those throwaway comments, which essentially, like you say, they are directly aimed at the women,
Yeah.
and they are derogatory, like
Mm.
on
Yeah.
purpose, right? So
Yeah.
it's definitely misogyny. Um, so yeah, and I think that's where it's interesting when we look at, okay, how much do we tolerate, and how much are we normalizing? And same as you, when you said about internalized homophobia, I've definitely carried a lot of internalized misogyny with me. And it was only, so I spent 10 years working on an oil refinery, well, on refineries generally, and I did a lot um of participating in kind of banter, because it was like a survival instinct. It was what the environment was.
Yeah.
You participate to be one of the guys because you don't want to be that girl. And yeah, and I was such, well, I'm going to say hypocrite. I would think that's quite harsh, but it is what it was, where I was using the language of like, we need better conditions for women, we need to not be behaving in this way, we need to be like sorting this stuff out. and also then at the same time participating in probably the lower level banter that was then reinforcing the messaging that some of this stuff was also okay. So
Mm.
when I think about how I was a good role model, massive mixed messaging from me.
Well, but then it links back to belonging, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you need it's a something we all need as human beings. And if we're excluded, it I'm sure you know this anyway, but it has similar damage. It causes similar damage to your brain as what a physical injury would do. So you naturally you need to belong, and I did. You know, I came from my mum's really homophobic as well, winning. So I wasn't she wasn't in my life then. I was very very alone, and so actually fitting in with a team was really essential to my survival and my mental health as well. And that's another thing that switched when I had my son, because that community that I built when I joined the police left once I had my son, because I wasn't the same person anymore, because I changed as a person. I wasn't doing the things, the normal things that the police officers were doing, like going out drinking, you know, or I wasn't on response team anymore. I'd had to make significant changes to my professional life to accommodate being a parent. And I wanted to be a parent and I really wanted to be present. So a lot had shifted, and that's something else that shifted. But of course you, Katie, will, and of course I will, and everybody else would have been complicit, if not joined in with those kind of behaviours, because you need to belong. And I know I did. And I try not to give myself too much of a hard time for it, because I know I needed to belong.
Yeah.
Because if you're not like, sometimes it's this extreme, although I haven't really seen it, but if you're not well liked in the police and you call for urgent assistance, not everybody shows up. So if you're in a fight and somebody's got a knife or something, you want everybody turning up. And if you're somebody that, and like I say, I've read about it, I haven't necessarily
Yeah.
seen it, and I've not been victim of that, but I've certainly heard of instances where people are that disliked on a team that they've called for urgent assistance and people haven't turned up. So,
Mhm.
and you, even if that's not something at the forefront of your mind, it's something that would sit there anyway, thinking,
Yeah.
I need people to come.
And I imagine even if there had not been any instances of that happening, it's still a human trait, isn't it? To feel that need for protection. So I can imagine even if it hadn't happened, still in the back of your mind,
Mm,
it would be there, wouldn't it? Because
yeah,
you especially in that line of work, there aren't that many jobs where you literally find yourself on the front line of something where things could go sideways very quickly, and those
yeah,
things could include violence, and those things could end up being fatal for you. Like
yeah,
you're actively knowing what you're going into, but that doesn't necessarily equal safe. Just because you
yes,
have knowledge and training.
yeah, yeah, exactly that, exactly that. So yeah, I guess subconsciously as well, it's there, even if I reflect to how I felt in my 20s, and I wouldn't have even considered that, I don't think. So aligned with my behavior, but yeah. Mm,
Yeah,
interesting.
interesting. You mentioned as well, so that you were the chair of the LGBT group, and then you were like, I didn't do that anymore. I set up my own group, and then we parked it. So can I come back to that?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So I didn't realize, again, and this, I have a thing about employee resource groups now, and this is why, because of my experience. I didn't even, when I first joined the Met, I thought, a guy said, oh, do you want to come to one of the network dues? So that's the LGBT network, was the employee resource group for the Met. And I was like, yeah, I'll go along. And I went, and there was just a load of guys in a pub, and I was like, it's not for me. There's no women. I'm good, thanks. So I left, and I never even considered the LGBT network after that, until I bumped into them at a conference, and they were like, well, why aren't you part of the network? I was like, it's not really for me. And they were like, no, we need more women. We need more women. And they had this plea of, you need to step up as a woman, because women won't join, and we need more women. And I remember having quite a heated discussion with the guy who was like, well, what are you doing to change what we can do for women? Yada, yada, yada. So I was like, okay, fine. So I joined. I went to an event. It was quite a big event. It was held externally, and they had this lineup of speakers, and I didn't even acknowledge it. They had this lineup of speakers, and there was not one female speaker. There was nobody speaking. And every conference I've been that's surrounding the LGBT network, whether that be on a national front, or on a metropolitan police front is just men and trans. And I was like, there's not even that many trans people. I'm not saying that doesn't matter, but I'm saying
Yeah.
we've spoken about it so much. We've wheeled out so many trans people to talk about their experiences. What about the
Yeah.
women? There's actually more lesbians than there are gay men in the Met, and there's more bisexuals than there are lesbians, as I already said. So anyway, I got a bit of smoke blown up my arse. You'd be great. You should do it. You should do it. So I was like, okay, yeah, I will. I will. So I was the women's lead, and I did some great work about different families. So I had surrogacy charities come and speak to police officers. I set up groups for individual parts of the LGBT acronym. Personally, I don't think it should be lumped together. I think it's very, very different. So they need to be treated differently. And I did a load of benchmarking as well to look at who we had, hence why I can say there's more bisexual people in. So I did all of this work, and effectively I was bullied out. Effectively I was bullied out, and they really made my life a misery when I got voted in as co-chair. I wasn't given any help. I had no idea of the governance. I had no idea of the structure of I didn't know anything. I was literally just given something and with no help, guidance, advice, or anything. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea of the power of employee resource groups. I knew nothing. And then, so I ended up stepping down. I'd been working quite hard on it. And this was at the time of the Baroness Casey review into the police
Right.
culture of the Met Police. This is one of my proudest things I think I've ever done, actually. And I'd said to the network, they had a meeting with the investigation team, Casey investigation team. So I said to the men, have you got any women speaking to the review team? No, we haven't. And I said, well, you need to have women there. And they said, we'll speak on your behalf. We know the problems. And I was like, okay, okay, that's fine. You speak on our behalf. So off I went, and I gathered as many lesbians and bisexual women as I could, and anybody else within the LGBT acronym and the plus and the Q. It's like, right, come to me on this day if you're interested. Spoke to the Casey investigation team, and we had a significant amount of time with the review team, who were fantastic as well. They were so kind, and they listened to, as did I, some really courageous women talking about their horrific experiences of being in the Met Police as a gay and a bi woman. I think there's a non-binary woman, a non-binary person, and an ace person there as well. I made sure everybody was represented. We had disabled people, different ethnicities, different religions, all within under the female or women LGBT, and that made it into the Casey review. Now it's not a big section, but it would have been missed out otherwise. And it really concentrated on the over sexualization of lesbian and gay women, or women really. So there's a couple of points in there that made it into the review, and it never would have happened if I hadn't have done that. But I managed to rally around, get lots of people together to be able to contribute. And it was really courageous of them. I mean, nobody was named, but they still did it. They still turned up when they needed to, and they delivered that. So that's why I ended up creating my own group. So I was like, it's needed. You know, I had so many women coming to me saying, this is needed. We need to drive the agenda forward. And I created our first conference that was made by women for women. And we had a discussion on parenting, the challenges of different ethnicity and cultures. So we had a couple of Black women and an Asian woman talk about their experiences. And they had kids as well. So it was a real niche. It was a melting pot of gorgeousness. It really was. And we had it at New Scotland Yard, and we had a commander come and open the whole event. And it was brilliant. You know, it was also hybrid as well. It was just after COVID. So it wasn't long ago. But it was good. It was a huge success, and it's still going now. That group is going
Nice.
strong, I believe. So yeah, it was good. It was just
Brilliant. Well, that is a fantastic outcome for really what, if you hadn't have been so tenacious about it, would have fizzled into yet again people being spoken on behalf of.
yes,
And
exactly.
and that I think is probably a bit of a watch out. And I would love to think that my listeners are a bit more savvy than that, but just in case, we're gonna just tag this as a, if you hear anybody in your organization talking about speaking on behalf of,
Yeah,
that's a red flag.
yeah,
with
isn't
with
it?
a neon sign backdrop, that there's some work to be done, because I mean, I'm always the first person to say like there's no one right way of doing things, and I don't believe in kind of the binaries of right and wrong and all this kind of stuff. But we really should be tuning in and paying attention to, if we aren't hearing from the perspectives of people who have that lived experience and hold that perspective,
Mm,
that, you know, allies are fantastic, but they're the they're not the answer, right? You know,
mm,
they are not the what's the word, the replacement. You know, they're not a
mm,
replacement for actual
mm,
lived experience. And I know a lot of organizations I work with don't have representation within their organization of, you know, the plethora of people that exist, right? But then that's why professional speakers exist and charities exist and other,
mm.
like you say, you did some work around surrogacy and you had someone come in and talk specifically about surrogacy who understands surrogacy.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's not hard to find someone who does know the thing that you want to learn about and
yeah.
have them come and impart their wisdom.
Yeah, exactly that. And always, and this is why data is so important as well, is to reflect on the data that you've got. And people take for golden what the employee resource groups are saying. And I see this across the board, even with companies that I work with now. You look at your data, who are your members and are they represented fairly? Because if they're not, then you're only hearing a small selection of voices. And if you've got employee resource groups, then they need to be representative of A, the company, which should then be representative of B, where you're recruiting from and where your head office or where your bases and offices are. That's what it needs to be reflective of, not a group of gay men and some trans people. And don't get me wrong, I hope I don't come across too critical. I completely understand and empathise with the fact that they also have issues, they also have
Totally.
challenges, and they also have barriers that they need to, things they need to educate people on, and allies and everything else, but not at the expense of others.
Yeah,
And that's really where we were. We were just, and I see it still, this isn't just limited to the Met, it's a societal problem. Therefore, it's
totally.
a your company problem, right? So
Totally.
it does need to be looked at. And I think a lot of employee resource groups are representative of that. Um,
Yeah, I think a lot of people leap to the idea that the resource group alone, or they might call it a staff network, or, you know, a support group, whatever you want to label it. Like, the name doesn't matter. It's the purpose of which you set it up for, and
mm,
the kind of the strategy that you put in place in terms of how is this going to be useful and how are we going to get value from the thing that we're doing. Like, what's the purpose?
yeah.
Who's included, and why are we doing this?
Mm,
And I think it was interesting, like, two other things that came up for me when you were talking is, one, there is also a tendency where we make the most marginalized people responsible then for the solving of the problems, rather than simply, I don't want to say simply being, but like, they are the perspective, they have the experience, but it's not their responsibility alone to then
mm,
come up with the solutions. And it's about, well, okay, you advise and you guide, um but we can't expect one marginalized person to speak on behalf of all people with that identity. And
yeah.
likewise, it's just making marginalized people work harder
Yeah. Yeah.
for this, like, for the same result. You know, if you're already well
Yeah.
represented, it's like, I don't have to take time out of my diary to go to that meeting because I'm already here and it's all fine for me. And like, you have to be quite careful about that. And then the other thing you said as well around kind of the way that you were brought into that group, it felt like, I'm going to go strong armed. It was
Yeah.
positioned to you that it was important that you step into this role. And I think, again, that to me doesn't signal safety. Like,
No.
there is one thing in kind of saying, like, well, this is an employee resource group for LGBT people, therefore you will be safe.
Mm,
And the actual being safe in that
mm,
space.
mm.
And I don't think those two sounded like they're married up very much in that example.
No, they really didn't. But I don't, and I was so annoyed. I remember feeling like so like, why are you speaking to me like this? And actually, somebody said to him like leave her alone, like let her be. And I was like, I don't. But it annoyed me so much that it made me want to step into the space to try and deal with the challenges face on. I wish I hadn't. I wish I'd have gone about it a different way, because it was really stressful. Like it was really stressful. It was really emotional. It was long. You know, it wasn't something that was a quick fix. This was on the side of my already stressful day job as well. So it was, yeah, I regret going about it the way I went. I should have just started off and made my own group, you know. But I guess I wouldn't have seen the reasons why if I hadn't have, you know, been victim of the misogyny and the I don't know how you would, what is for lesbian homophobia, what would that be,
Yeah.
from
I mean,
men to women, gay men to gay women, I don't know what that
I
would
mean,
be.
I think it's still homophobia, isn't it? It's just it has a different flow. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's still homophobia, you
it's a
know.
weird one, it's a weird one.
Can we say just queer phobia? Does that cover everybody? Like, I don't know.
Queer
And
on queer.
and
Yeah.
it's interesting that you say that actually, because I experience more queer phobia from within the LGBTQIA plus community than I do outside of it. Because
I hear
actually,
that, yeah.
yeah, straight people don't know what ace is, don't know what asexuality is, just no idea. And I said, and when you were saying like when you kind of out yourself and then you're waiting to see that minute just to see what happens, right? That rang true for me because I'm waiting for people to just go, what?
Yeah.
Or they try and blag it and they're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, 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 yeah. I'm like, you have no idea what I've just said. You literally don't know. And that I kind of think is fine because actually if you don't know, you don't know. But it's within the community where I get the and what's important about that. You know, it's almost as if like, yeah, but you're not really gay, you're not really queer. Like, and I'm like, yeah, like
Mm.
it's not the norm. So what else do you think we are?
Yeah, why, yeah, it's like you're expected to try and find somewhere else to fit. Then separate the acronym and treat people how they should be treated, you know, with that like careful
Empathetic.
understanding. If you don't understand, respectful and careful understanding, and then leave it there. Just be
Yeah.
kind. You don't, you shouldn't bring anything else to the table for something that is different, should you, or that you
Mm,
don't understand, or to some extent agree with. Not that I put air quotes for that as well, because I don't really think people's sexuality should have anything to do with whether or not you agree. You know, no one's
yep.
asking for your permission. But
Yep.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I hear that from bisexual people as well, that they feel they get the most grief from the inside the community.
Yeah. Yes. Same actually, because it's interesting. I love it. There's a guy I follow on Instagram called Cody Daigle Orions, but he's under Ace Dad Advice, and he's kind of an older gent who is Ace, giving out amazing kind of like dad advice.
I love.
But I mean, he's brilliant. If anybody's like interested, like follow him, buy his book. He's great. But he did a post this week actually around kind of like almost bisexuality being a person's gateway to understanding that they're ace, in a sense of we know we're not straight, so then we think okay, and this was exactly the same for me. It's like, yeah, but I'm not just into girls. That doesn't make sense. It's, oh, maybe I'm bi. Like, and then and you the whole it's almost like this progression of questioning that takes place, and
Mhm.
it's almost like it's the closest you can get because you're not your orientation isn't in one direction or another. So you're just like, okay, maybe that's where I sit. And it isn't until you realize your orientation doesn't orient that you're like, oh no, it makes sense. Okay, it's not an external thing at all, right? But that also can be quite confusing for people in that we have to, because let's face it, our education system doesn't help us understand how this stuff works, so we're there just blindly figuring it out for ourselves, like literally going through the motions of testing the various labels, thinking, is that right? I don't know, I'll sit with it for a bit and see if it feels right. and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's only once you get there you're like, ah, that's the one for me. And I thought
Mm,
that was quite fascinating, and it made sense and certainly resonated for me. um
mm,
but yeah, and so I think like and for that reason I can understand why bi and ace people have a lot in common in terms of that feeling of acceptance, because it's almost like um people want you to like pick a team, don't they? They want you to be a thing, and you
yes.
can't be more than one thing. It's
No,
like,
make it easy for me to
yeah, yeah,
understand.
exactly. Don't mix the colors, and it's
Yeah.
kind of like same as you didn't choose it, I didn't choose it either.
I'll try and explain. Like I have this with my stepmom actually, and it tickles me because her name's Karen, but she
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry.
the conversations that I have with her about, or even just straightforward gay, you know, we're talking gay, like it's not complex. It's not, that doesn't even require any extra thinking. It just means that, like, I have three things I'm allergic to, right? Penicillin, peas, and penis. Like, and that's how I will put it for her and for doctors as well when they ask if there's any way I can be pregnant. No, there's not. I have a severe allergy to penis. But yeah, she will say things. Well, can't you just go and find a nice man at a pub? Like, how do you know if you haven't tried it? I was like, why don't? Have you ever sat with a woman you'd really like it? Oh, oh, I would not. I would not. Karen, come on now, you would. Oh, how could you say that in front of your dad? Well, how can you say that in front of my wife? Like,
Yeah.
you're pimping me out to men that you think are attractive, and my wife sat right here. So how do you think that feels for her? But heaven forbid I make a joke in front of dad. I mean, my dad couldn't care less, but
Yeah.
that's, yeah, her approach, and that's just straightforward. It's like you then get the normal quote, the normal comments of you're just greedy, or
Yeah.
yeah, it's it won't. I don't. I can't. I know some people think that it will die out with different generations, but I feel that having saying that it's a generational thing is actually quite rude towards different ages, because actually it's just a, are you interested in learning and
Mm,
accepting, and just being, you know? And I just don't think, I will not allow age as being an excuse of not
agreed.
being
And
kind.
quite frankly, it's ageist to imply
It
that,
is.
right?
It is.
Like
Yeah.
it's the
It is.
assumption that somehow if you are of a certain age, there's no way you could really understand any of this and it'll be fine because they'll all be dead soon. It's like, no,
No.
really not. Like it's not because I use my dad as a sounding board for a lot of my content because I'm like, if I can explain it in a way that my dad understands it, I know that we're good. And there's a lot of things he doesn't understand, and that's okay, but he tries.
Yeah.
And he asks a lot of, like, when we're having a conversation, he asks a lot of very astute questions that make me go, okay, yeah, that's going to be a barrier to you learning. Well, that's something we need to think about. And but he gets there, like, and that for me is like, well, if he's nearly 80, he's more than 80. How, like, then we're fine, right?
Yeah.
He's still willing to go, okay, tell me more. I don't understand, tell me more.
Yeah, yeah, and that's all it, and that's it, isn't it? It's just asking questions, and I take that approach with naysayers or anybody that's difficult. I had this with my mother-in-law this weekend. Obviously, the flags are very topical, aren't they, at the minute?
Mm,
So having a conversation with her, and I really try and come at it at a place because I know it's not a competition, but I know I'll win, because my questions are unoffensive, and I always try and position it as, let me just try and understand your perspective, and almost like try and convince me, like, where do you get your data from? Well, my friend Jane told me. Well, where did your friend Jane get her data? Right, this isn't enough. You're just being gullible, you're believing what people are telling you, and that's not okay. And here's an example of why that's not okay. What if someone said you did X, Y, and Z, and then people started, coming around your house and trying to beat you up because they thought you were, I don't know, someone spread a rumor that you were a paedophile or something. Like, it's the same, it's the same. Like, let me put it in a logic that you understand to stop your crazy thinking, because it's not, yeah. Sorry, I get on a rant then. I've still got
but
it
no, but
inside
that's
for
true.
the end.
And I think this is why, though, when we think about all of the various identity characteristics that the humans exist with, um, why it's such a scary topic for so many people, isn't it? Because navigating the intersection of all of these things and our inherent need to either be right or wrong about something, and
Mm,
if I think I am right, I have to prove I'm right and that you are wrong. Like,
mm,
it makes everything really, really tricky. And I think that's why there's a lot of resistance to some having some of these conversations just with curiosity,
mm.
and just really trying to unpick, like, how did you get to where you've got to with that belief? Like,
Yeah,
how did we get there? What is it that's preventing you from seeing this person's as a person? Like, this
yeah,
humanity, and
yes.
and how, and I'm kind of, and I hate myself for saying this sometimes, but obviously sometimes I also have to accept that some people hold their belief systems, and I've got to be okay with that too. I don't
Mm,
have to agree, I don't have to understand, but I also have to respect their right to hold whatever their belief system is, but I still want to understand. just, or to try and understand, I suppose, just to see like, well, what am I missing? What is your logic
mm,
that makes so much sense to you?
mm,
And to me, it feels utterly mind-blowing that you could even think that. Like, how do we
yeah.
get that? And I think for me, then one of the really important, I guess, points I really want to make today is around like we need to have more of these vulnerable conversations in that are just more exploratory around the existence of humans and all of our experiences, not just, oh, I have an organization and I'm a leader and I'm responsible for DEI, and therefore we're going to do, like say, we're going to have this employee resource group, we're going to do this policy and this, and we're going to just break it down to literally like compliance and not get into the mucky stuff. Because
Mm,
it's like, well, you're not serving anybody by doing that. You're not helping anybody. What's the point? Like, save your
yeah.
cash. Just like, if
Yeah.
if you're not really going to be invested in doing the work, or at least trying to do the work. um and 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 I'm also a little bit like, beware of people that will try and sell you solutions where it's like, you must do this and you must do it this way,
Mm,
or or kind of really just say, they tell you to do something without explaining why it's important.
mm,
Just saying like, yeah, you're wrong if you don't do it this way. because then
yeah.
because then I'm kind of like, well, it's your business, you have to figure it out.
Yeah.
They're your people, you are responsible for them, you need to be asking the questions to find out why that's important for it to be done that way, and if it's in their best interests.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And like you say, like what is it you're trying to achieve? Because if it's just a performative like percent increase, then that's not right. Because well, like I've seen it on scale in the Met. We recruited so many black people and they all left because it's not a place they all left. Sorry, that's a
Yeah,
really generalist statement, but they struggled to retain a significant number. That's better.
yeah,
Because it's not a place where people want to stay. You know,
yeah,
we pretends that the history hasn't happened, you know, from a policing perspective and from even just a racial perspective, of England. We pretend it hasn't happened and we should acknowledge it. Like,
yeah,
I know, and I know obviously what this conversation is about, and I'm always happy to share where I've fucked up, and I really, really try and bring it. And I know we talk people did to death unconscious bias a few years ago, but this I always try and keep this at the forefront of my mind. So when I joined in 2003, there's a couple of reasons why I would say profiling. One, there was a guy called, people may know him as the Night Stalker, but we knew him as the
yeah,
Operation Minstick Man, and he was a black guy, and that's all we knew about him. We knew he was a black guy. We knew he was somewhere from the Caribbean. We knew he had tribal marks. We knew very few details about him other than his ethnicity, and that he was probably traveling around on a motorbike at night and he was raping old people, the elderly, and like quite some so barbarically that they needed surgery. And I think one person even died. And this went on for 20 years. So we were like literally programmed, because of course we want to find this suspect. If it was a white guy with ginger hair, we'd want to find this person as well. But that's all we were looking for. So we were always looking because we're so desperate to find him. And also, I worked in Southeast London, which has got a large population of Afro Caribbean people. So a lot of the time, Afro Caribbean people would be on our briefings every day. Now, that you could argue, and I do argue this, that the reason why they're on briefings every day is because we're only looking for black people, we're only putting intelligence reports on for black people. That's what's being fed to the department who create the briefings, which is then being put on. So I can understand the cycle, though I really didn't at the time. So that has been ingrained. My parents are also quite racist. So this really is, I know I'm winning, aren't I? I really am winning. Homophobic and racist parents, lucky me. So this is ingrained in me. Now, I remember going to visit a friend in North London, and she lived in a tower block. And I was struggling with my bags. I had my son with me. He was about 6 at the time. I couldn't open the door. And this black guy comes running over to me, and I thought, oh my God, he's gonna kick off. And he, let me get the door for you, miss. Let me get the door for you, miss. And I was like, why did I think
mm,
that? Like really check myself, because I was scared. Like I was scared. And as soon as he said that, I thought, who am I? Like, who am I? In my core, I know that's not me, like in my core. So whenever I feel that come in, that like slightly suspicious, but I joke still, I still cannot be off duty. Like, it's just, I can't do
Yeah.
it still. But if ever I feel that, why? And I will always ask myself, why? Really try and bring that unconscious bias to the front of my, to the very forefront of my thinking. And then I break it down and I can understand why, because actually I spent a considerable amount of my adult life looking at and searching young black men, and arresting, not only, but they were a significant proportion of who I was dealing with. And I understand the socioeconomic issues related to all of that and everything else, but that's where bias is dangerous, because it's unchecked. And I make those, have made those mistakes, and now I will advocate for people. You know, I made sure that the Met teach the new police officers the history of police in the Afro-Caribbean community, and why there's so many Afro-Caribbean people in London. What the Windrush scandal was about, because we think, God, that would never happen now. Well, it has. Look at the Windrush scandal, the same as the riots last year. You know, I make sure that I'm speaking to everybody. Right, tell me how you feel, because I don't have to have a conversation with my son to make sure he's safe because he's white. How do you feel? Because you don't know if your son's okay. And knowing that as a white woman, I can see that and understand it to as much as I can without the lived experience,
Yep.
but as much as I can, and making sure they're the conversations that are safe to have. Because people feel so awkward talking about race. I know they do a little bit about gay as well, but they do feel so awkward talking about ethnicity or complimenting someone's hair or their tan or, you know, whatever. And I said to a guy recently, I said, oh, you've got a nice tan. He was an Asian guy. And he was like, oh, thanks. No one said that to me yet. I was like, no, you're definitely darker since you've got back from holiday. He's like, I am, aren't I? So, but people won't have those conversations with people who aren't white because they're scared. But you're missing out for the whole.
And when we say people won't have those conversations, generally white people won't have those conversations. Like, and true, because I don't think white people generally, until we start looking at this stuff and we start picking it apart, we don't consider ourselves to be racialized. We've normalized our racialization as the default, and then it's everybody else sits outside of that. And I don't think we really have been educated or are given the space to explore that idea that actually we're racialized too, and with it comes a lot of baggage and internalized racism. That I remember having a conversation with someone once when I said, yeah, but we're white people, we are all racist, and he went, very resistant to that, let's put it that way. And I understood why, because obviously what I'd said was quite triggering, but I was like, I need you to also think about why I'm saying this, is because we are born into a system that prioritizes our safety, our needs, like us. We aren't led, given any information to the contrary of that, we aren't led to have conversations about racialization and what that means. We don't know. So we participate in that system. And even if we don't actively go around saying terrible things or thinking terrible thoughts, we still participate in that system. Like, we are products of that environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
we need to recognize that, don't we? And just and have that, you know, be aware of it. And it is, sometimes I feel uncomfortable. You know, I didn't know how that guy was going to take it when I complimented his tan, but I wouldn't think twice if they were white. So that's my balance. Would I feel the same if you know, if it was a white person I was speaking to?
And then I guess the build would have been, if it hadn't have landed well, it would also have been for you to receive with grace him kind of being like, I don't like that, thank you, you know, or whatever that response might have been, like, I don't appreciate that as a comment, thank you. Like, and it would have also been right for you to be like, I apologize, you know.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
it's
I'd have
his
felt awful.
experience.
But and I would like, and that's why I think people are resistant, because they don't want to feel that, do they? They do not want to feel that horrible feeling of somebody challenging them. But you know, you can. That's the same. One person would be quite open to that compliment, and one person wouldn't. And
both of those things are okay, right?
And it's personal preference, right? So to some extent, it is, as long as you're not, I would say, going being racist and being offensive and not being considerate in what you're saying to people. And your intention, I think, that needs to come across, doesn't it? You need to make sure, sorry,
Yep.
I really, really did not mean to offend you, and I'm really, really sorry about that. But why do it again?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the tricky thing to navigate, isn't it? I am conscious as well today that we are tight on time. So
Yeah, sorry.
no, this is grand. This is a great conversation. I think we should probably put something in, and we can continue it. We'll see what people think to this, and they can drop us some questions, and maybe we can go a bit further.
Okay.
But what I do want to ask, because I ask everybody, is this: Kate Fletcher, is there anything
Yes,
else
my lady.
that you came to say that you have not had an opportunity to say?
Check your data. No, I've already said
Yeah.
that.
Say it again for good measure.
Check your data. And I think no, I think being uneasy and creating a space, and this is to DEI professionals actually, because some DEI professionals can be so quick to jump down people's throats. I remember I was quite new in the space, and I sent an email out saying, um, it was to my department, which was about 900 people, and it was about prostate awareness. It obviously had nothing to do with me, but for all the guys on my team, make sure, I can't remember the details of it, but it's for all the men, check your prostate. And I had an email back from the LGBT network saying that it was not inclusive. It wasn't to them, but one of them was on the mailing list. It wasn't inclusive, and I should withdraw that email because I'm not thinking about people who don't identify as male. And I wholeheartedly disagree. I think actually it was aimed at the majority of men who identify as male, and the message is important to be sent. And there was no, there was no harm in what I was saying at all. It was factually correct, and it was an awareness campaign for prostate, which is obviously a male it is a male problem, and that, I think, when you get attacked so quickly, it takes a lot for people to then get the courage back up again to try and do good things. And I'm saying be aware of it, be aware of yourself, check your biases, make sure that you're leading with good intention, but you're considerate in what you're communicating. But for DEI professionals, I think we can be quick. Some people can be quick to criticize and attack and make it a very, very unsafe psychological environment for people to have healthy conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the point. It's the conversation, right? It's the exchange and the dialogue that is what will ultimately bring about change. And very quickly, if people want to connect with you or get hold of you or have further conversations with you, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, or on LinkedIn. I'm just Kate Fletcher. Can you put that link
It
in?
will be in the show notes. Yep, no
Oh, right.
worries.
Yeah, then just drop me an email on LinkedIn, and I will get back to you. Most definitely. I love meeting new people.
Awesome stuff. Kate Fletcher, thank you so much for your time and joining us on the Speaking of Inclusion podcast.
Katie Allen, it has been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.